Sangye chodang sogi chognam la janchu padu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki drola penche sangye dropa sho sangye chodang sogi chognam la janchu padu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki Jola penche sangye dropa sho sangye chodang soki chognam la janchu padu dagni kyapsu chi dagi chunyen gipe sonam ki jola penche sangye dropa sho.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so now let's just do 2 or 3 minutes meditation on the breath. So sit in your best meditation posture, bring your mind inside, find your breath where it comes in, goes out through your nostrils. That point at the entrance of your nostrils is where we're focusing on the breath. So just generate strong determination. Think, now I'm going to focus on my breath without allowing myself to become distracted by anything whatsoever, external or internal. And then focus on your breath. So now think, the purpose of my life is to lead all sentient beings from suffering to enlightenment. In order to do that, first I have to reach enlightenment myself. And to do that, I need to study, practice, and realize the entire path to enlightenment. So in order to do that, I'm going to study the first Path to Enlightenment text, the first lamrim text, Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So very briefly like that, generate heartfelt bodhicitta. So, why it's good just to remind ourselves of that. Of course, we took refuge and generated bodhicitta in the prayers, but, usually we get caught up in reading and reciting the words, and we're not really thinking or feeling the meaning unless we're very familiar with those prayers, which, after nearly 30 years, some of us might be, but and they're important not just because it's a Kurukulla tradition or Geshe Tsulga liked us to do them, but they reflect the what Manjushri advised Lama Tsongkhapa. As I said, the purpose of our life is to to free sentient beings from suffering, lead them to enlightenment. To do that, we have to study, practice, and realize the path to enlightenment. So realize is the key thing to make the teachings on the path real for our mind, for them to actually be, to make our mind the Dharma, to make our mind the path to enlightenment. So we do that by studying, contemplating, and meditating on the path. As Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa when he asked him what's the best way to get realizations, I'm sure you've all heard this before, but Manjushri said, well, the seed of the realizations is meditating on the path. But that, actually what he said is, there are three things that should be done together. The main thing, the seed of the realization, is meditating on the path, whether it's guru devotion or perfect human rebirth, impermanence, death, the refuge, karma, all those different lamrim topics. That's the seed of the realization. Without meditating on the perfect human rebirth, you can't realize it. But that has to be done in conjunction with purification and creation of merit, which is the second thing. There's got two sides of the same coin. And the third thing is praying to the guru as oneness with the deity. So these, and as Lama Zopa Rinpoche always says, that the essence of purification and creation of merit, the second thing that Manjushri told Lama Tsongkhapa, the essence is the seven limb practice. So when we do these prayers, the refuge, we take refuge to distinguish ourselves from followers of non-Buddhist paths, and we generate bodhicitta to distinguish ourselves from followers of the lesser vehicle Buddhist path, to remind ourselves that we're Mahayana practitioners striving for enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So refuge and bodhicitta, and then then we do the praise to Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, and when we do that, we should remember that he isn't, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha isn't just this guy who lived in India 2,500 years ago and got enlightened, but Guru Shakyamuni Buddha is a manifestation of the what Lama Zopa once called the Guru Omniscient Mind, the enlightened mind of all the Buddhas, the past, present, and future, and manifesting at that time in that aspect in accordance with the karma of the people on earth. And our Guru is also the manifestation of the enlightened mind appearing to us in human form according to our karma at this time, and that they're all really the same person, just in different aspects. The enlightened mind of all the three-time Buddhas, Guru Shakyamuni Buddha, Lama Tsongkhapa himself, of course, and our teacher or our teachers. So when we do the praise, when we're praising, doing that praise to Shakyamuni Buddha, we should be remembering that this is our Guru in the form of Shakyamuni Buddha at that time. And then we do the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga. So again, our Guru manifests as Lama Tsongkhapa, and then when we do the Lama Tsongkhapa Guru Yoga, that's first of all, that's a 7-limb practice, the essence of purification, creation of merit, and we're also fulfilling that instruction, the third point that Manjushri made to Lama Tsongkhapa, to pray to our Guru as oneness for the deity, for help in our Dharma practice, help on the path, removing of obstacles, internal and external, and allowing us to make quick progress. And then we recite the Heart Sutra, which is one of the 6 powerful ways of purification. I don't know if I can remember all the 6, but reading texts on emptiness and meditating on emptiness and reciting the Heart Sutra is one. Then there's circumambulating holy objects. There's reciting the names of the Buddhas like we do with the 35 Buddhas. And then there's making holy objects like making tsatsas or painting tankas or building stupas, things like that. Can't remember the other 2 right now. So look them up. That's homework. Look up, see what the 6 methods of purification are, and tell me where I went wrong. So then we offer a mandala, which is kind of the essential way of offering, creating merit. And then again, we remind ourselves, refuge and bodhicitta, but with the prayer saying, through the merit created by listening to teachings, or actually the person who's doing the teaching says, through the merit, normally we say dagi jinsog, by practicing giving and the other perfections. So here we say by listening to Dharma. The teacher says by offering the Dharma and other perfections may I quickly reach enlightenment of the sacred sentient being, something like that. Chojin. So then after we recite those prayers, it's good just, I think, to settle our mind by meditating on the breath. Actually, what we should really do then is, after we've settled our mind, look inside our mind and see what our motivation is, what our real motivation is, not just the words we just said, for being here, and to see if our motivation is kind of a worldly motivation, or a pure motivation of bodhicitta, that we're really participating here in order to reach enlightenment for the sake of sentient beings. So when we check our motivation, if we find there is some worldly motivation creeping in somehow, then we should replace it with the pure motivation of bodhicitta. So what we're embarking on here for I don't know how long is this Atisha's Lamp for the Path. So this is a book on commentary on Atisha's text by Geshe Sonam Rinchen. He took over as the main teacher in the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala after the original teacher, the first teacher, Geshe Ngaon Dage, Gen Rinpoche, retired from teaching at the library and went to New Zealand for some reason. Well, I guess there were a bunch of students from New Zealand, and they invited him there, and they started a Dharma center there, which is still going strong, although Gen Rinpoche passed away in the 90s. So Geshe Sonam Rinchen and his translator Ruth Sonam put out a lot of really key texts that were published by Snowline before it was taken over by Shambhala. So I'll be looking at that, and then also His Holiness's teaching here. This teaching His Holiness gave in Los Angeles, and we published this for Geshe Lama Yeshe Wisdom Archive. We published this for Thupten Dagi Ling, which was Geshe Gelsen Center in Long Beach. I think it was in Los Angeles at that time, then later moved to Long Beach. And he gave this teaching in Los Angeles in 2000. And he combined, it was a commentary on Atisha's Lamp for the Path and Lama Tsongkhapa's short lamrim teaching called Lines of Experience or Songs of Spiritual Experience. Lama Zopa calls it Hymns of Experience. So this is really an amazing book. It's out of print right now, but you can find it online at lamayeshe.com. The whole thing. You can download a PDF. It's a really amazing teaching. And then there's Khunu Lama Rinpoche's teaching, which is anyway. There's a link to it in the calendar. I think Kurukulla calendar, but it's one of the teachings in this book, Teachings from Tibet, which we also published, and is one of two teachings that we received from Khunu Lama Rinpoche in Bodh Gaya, Nepal, in 1975. Khunu Lama Rinpoche had been invited to Nepal to give teachings to the monks at the monastery in Swayambhu, which was Serkang Dorji Chung's monastery, and he spent a little time in Bodhanath near Kopan, and a bunch of us, mostly new monks and nuns, we'd been ordained for about a year. We went down and we received Foundation of All Good Qualities, which we've already been through here, and this Lamp for the Path that was translated by Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So that was kind of special as well. So we'll look at these different teachings at different times over this in these sessions. But so if you can study these books as well, I don't have anything original to say. So I think you'll get a lot out of it if you do. In between times, if you study these. So first I'm going to read what Geshe Sonam Rinchen says about Atisha. Also, there's some rather cool footnotes here, so I might mention them as well. I don't know if you're into footnotes. Sometimes the best stuff is in the footnotes. Atisha, so he lived 982 to 1054. He could have lived longer. I think when he asked Tara, when he was invited to it might mention this, I haven't read this for a little while. And there's a longer version, of course, of Atisha's life story at the beginning of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. Geshe Tenley started teaching that so many years ago. If he taught Atisha's story, which he probably did, it's probably worth reminding ourselves of it. Anyway, he was invited to Tibet, so I think he asked Tara if he should go, and she said, well, if you go to Tibet, your life will be shortened by, I think it was 17 years, but it will be extremely beneficial. So he said, well, I don't care if I live longer or not. If it's beneficial, I should do it. So, if he hadn't gone, we might not be talking about Atisha at all, but it would probably say 982 to 1071, but it says 1054 because he went to Tibet and lived 17 years, less than he would have. Atisha and the Invitation to Tibet, a traditional account. In the style of discourse employed at the great Indian monastic university of Nalanda, footnote, Nalanda Monastic University, in now what is the Indian state of Bihar, was for many centuries the greatest center of secular and Buddhist studies in India. Indian archaeological sources say it was founded by King Kumaragupta in the 5th century and was later famed for its outstanding and vast library. Fifth century. So I have to check this. Somebody else can check it too. I thought Nagarjuna was at Nalanda, but he's usually said to have lived in the 2nd century or written his main texts in the 2nd century. So, but then the other texts say he lived for 600 years. So it's possible he could have gone to Nalanda in the later part of his, the last 300 years of his life. Not sure about some of these things. But anyway, Nalanda and in the style of discourse employed at the great Indian monastic university of Nalanda, 3 kinds of purity were stressed at the beginning of any teaching. The purity of the teacher's speech, of the listener's mind stream, and of the teaching itself. So the footnote here says, the teacher should have received the unbroken lineage of teachings from a living master and should not be motivated by any disturbing emotions while teaching. Well, luckily I don't consider myself a teacher, so just, what do they call them? TA, teacher's aides? Is that what it is? Or a tutor? Someone who's been around a little bit longer than some of the other people, and has heard a few things and can help others in their studies. So that's sort of...
You're very modest.
Well, there's a lot to be modest about. The subject matter should be presented in the proper sequence without contradictions between previous and later statements, nor between the explicit and implicit content. It should be clearly and felicitously expressed. These factors contribute to the purity of the teacher's speech. The student maintains mental purity by being attentive, retentive, and by not harboring impure motivations, such as a desire for reward or for fame as a scholar or practitioner. A genuine wish to purify and transform the mind should be present. So check up. A teaching is pure and authentic when it is firmly based on the Buddha's words. It should be uncorrupted and capable of producing valid realizations when practiced. So, as I mentioned, I did receive this teaching from Khunu Lama Rinpoche in 75. And I hate to say this, but I can't quite remember. I think I was in Los Angeles in 2000 when His Holiness gave this teaching. I know I was one of the editors, so I'm quite familiar with it. I was. But when I was working on this book, I just thought, I mean, this is His Holiness the Dalai Lama's teachings on Atisha and Lama Tsongkhapa's lamrim. It's like, it was kind of hard. I mean, it couldn't get any better than that, you know, if you're going to work on something. So it really is a wonderful book. I have to check with Wendy. I think we were there. You know, we used to go to a lot of His Holiness teachings. Unfortunately, I think it's like 5 years since he was in the States now, and he's become such a Zoom addict that we may not see him again. You know, but you know, he just turned was it 87?
86.
86, 35. He was born the same year as Lama Yeshe, 1935. So, you know, I don't know if we'll see him again in the States. It used to be so wonderful to go to his teachings and receive teachings, but also see all the Dharma friends from all over not just the country, but people would come from other parts of the world too, you know, especially to New York or LA. So a traditional biography describes the spiritual path to inner freedom, followed by the person whose life story is told. So I skipped a bit. At the monastery of the University of Vikramasila, so Vikramasila is, there are three great monasteries in Bihar, sort of within, you know, a couple of 100 miles of each other, I guess. There was Nalanda, which is near Rajgir, which is a little bit outside of Bodh Gaya, where the Buddha reached enlightenment, and where Vulture's Peak is, where the Buddha gave the second turning of the wheel, where he gave the perfection of wisdom sutras at Rajgir, Vulture's Peak. So Nalanda was near there. And then there was Vikramasila, which was on the Ganges, east of Patna, maybe a couple of 100 miles. And then there was Odantapuri, which was south of south of Patna, which is the capital of Bihar. So there were these three great monastic universities in Bihar. So the exact location of Vikramashila has not been established. Tibetan accounts state that Vikramashila was at least a day's journey from Bodh Gaya and could be seen from the banks of the Ganges near a small hill which rose from the surrounding flatland. The Indian Archaeological Survey locates it to the south of the Ganges and north of hilly country, less than 100 kilometers east of Bhagalpur in the state of Bihar. Nalanda and Vikramashila were supported by the Pala dynasty. Vikramashila was active from the 8th until the latter part of the 12th century. By the beginning of the 11th century, the decline of these seats of learning had already begun, and they were finally obliterated by the Muslim conquests of the 12th and 13th centuries. So we often hear about the Muslim conquests destroying the monasteries and stuff, but I think a lot of the Hindu, I don't know if they were called Hindus back then, Vedantists, or I'm not sure what they were, but the followers of what has become Hinduism anyway, they were also became quite anti-Buddhist and played their part in the suppression of Buddhism. I don't know whether it was out of jealousy or exactly what it was, but at that time, Buddhism had been established for a few centuries, had begun to be established in Tibet, and gradually moved almost completely to Tibet, and where it was preserved and developed over the next millennium. So Nalanda, Vikramashila, and Odantapuri. So at the monastic university of Vikramashila, it was customary to discuss the outstanding features of the author and the subject matter, and how to give and listen to a discourse which combines such excellent qualities. So you see in Lama Tsongkhapa's in the lamrim Chemo, and then it's followed in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And when you look at the outline of the lamrim, there are these four major sections: the section about the details about the authors, to establish the purity of the source, and the qualities of the teaching, the lamrim teaching itself, why the advantages of studying the Dharma in its lamrim aspect, and then the third one, how to listen and how to teach. So that's, like here, advice for student and teacher, and then the actual how disciples are led on the path. So then, that's divided into, how to follow the teacher, which is the root of the path, how to generate devotion to the guru, and then having become devoted to the guru, what to do next. And then there's those two parts, sort of exhorting ourselves to extract the essence from the perfect human rebirth, and then how to extract the essence from the perfect human rebirth. And then that's divided into the three paths: the path of the lower capable being, as Lama Zopa calls it, sometimes called the lower scope, and the path of the middle capable being, the practitioner of intermediate capability, the middle scope, and then the path of the great capable being, the path of the practitioner of greatest capability, the Mahayana path, the great scope. So it's said that this idea of these three levels of path was introduced by Atisha in his lamrim text, in Lamp for the Path. So how to give and listen to a discourse which combines such excellent qualities. Since the last point relates to the attitudes of both teacher and student, it's clear that similar issues were considered important in both monastic traditions. That had been Nalanda and Vikramashila, and I guess Adantapuri. Following the custom of Vikramashila, with which Atisha was closely associated, we begin by establishing the author's authenticity. This could be done by demonstrating the authenticity of the Buddha and of all the great masters through whom the teachings came down to Atisha. So you see in the back of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, there's detailed the lineage of the lamrim teachings is given, mentioning teacher by teacher as it came all the way down. Both streams of teachings, the teachings of the wisdom lineage and the method lineage. So the wisdom lineage came from the Buddha, gave teachings to Manjushri, who passed them to Nagarjuna, and then from Nagarjuna to Aryadeva, and then down through teachers like Chandrakirti and Shantideva and so on. And then the method lineage from Shakyamuni Buddha to Maitreya, and then Maitreya gave them to a Sangha. We know the story of a Sangha going to retreat for 12 years, trying to connect with Maitreya, and then Maitreya finally doing that, and then Maitreya taking him to Tushita and giving him teachings on these 5 important texts. The Abhisamaya Lankara, the Mahayana Sutra Lankara, the Dhamma Dhammata Vibhanga, Madhyanta Vibhanga, and the Uttara Tantra. So these are 5 important texts. Lama Yeshe was very keen on Maitreya's texts, and in fact he taught us commentary. Lama Yeshe gave teachings on Uttanamche, which is Madhyanta Vibhanga, distinguishing between the middle and the extremes, and Cheni Namche, Dhamma Dhammata Vibhanga, Dhamma Dhammata, forget how that translates. Hoping to complete work on Lama's teachings and publish them, but not quite sure what will come first, the next life or the publication of those texts. It's taking a long time. So then a Sangha passed those method lineage teachings down to Vasubandhu, and then it came through other teachers. You can see it in the back of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And then both streams merged in Atisha, and then he brought them to Tibet. So the teaching came down to Atisha, but existing accounts of his life speak for themselves and convince us of the great knowledge he possessed and of his dedication as a practitioner. There's a little booklet on the life of Atisha, and it was first published in Thailand back in the early 70s, and then there was a Lama lived in Boston called Thupten Kelsang Rinpoche, Rahob Rinpoche. I don't know if any of you met him. He passed away last year in New York. But before Kurukulla started, there was Milarepa Center, And there was a Geshe there. Geshe Losang Jampa was the resident teacher at Milarepa Center. And it was pretty quiet up there. You know, he didn't get many students, but Tim McNeil, the former director of Wisdom Publications, and another Dharma student called Martha Tack, who was director at Milarepa for a while. She and her husband Larry live up in Vermont, I think not far from Milarepa. Martha, she was a librarian at the Harvard Architecture School. They used to invite Geshe Jampa down to Boston once a month to give teachings. So he would come, and about 25, 30 people would come to the teachings, you know, quite a reasonable crowd once a month. And then he'd go back up to Vermont where pretty much nothing was happening. And Martha and Tim also used to go to teachings by Thupten Kelsang Rinpoche. I'm not sure when he came to Boston. But there was a center. He had a center. He was over in maybe Marblehead or somewhere a little bit east there. The people used to go to his place for teachings, and they had a thing called the Mindfulness Institute. And he over a long period of time, he was giving teachings on the Bodhicharyavatara, you know, Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life. And so there was that kind of group of students, and so I guess some of them would come when Geshe Jampa came down. I'm trying to remember, there was the guy who ran the American guy who ran the institute, Mindfulness Institute for Rahul Rinpoche. Can't remember his name, Larry someone? Or... Anyway, there was some bad scene, and he basically took over the institute and kicked the Rinpoche out. So I don't know what happened to the Mindfulness Institute, but I'm not sure about his practice of mindfulness either. But I don't know if he's still around. I used to see him occasionally. He was huge in the marijuana legalization movement. So he's probably happy to have some success in that. Anyway, Thupten Kelsang, this Rinpoche was in Thailand in the early 70s, and with a guy called John Blofeld, who had published some books on Buddhism, on Tibetan Buddhism from Thailand. They published this book on the life of Atisha. So somehow a copy of that, I found a copy of that. And then when I was running a center in Delhi, we were doing a little publication there. And we wrote to them to see if we get permission, and we never heard back. So we just published the book. And I have a copy of it. I meant to bring it in, but so then we put it online on lamayeshi.com. And then somehow Rahul Rinpoche, who was one of the original translators, saw that we'd done that. And I don't know about him, but his assistant freaked out that we were stealing his copyright and making all this money from this book or something, I don't know. And they demanded that we take it offline and write a letter saying that we don't have the rights that he does. There was no copyright notice, by the way, in the book. So if something's published without a copyright notice, it's pretty much anyone can copy it. In fact, we could have copied it and put our copyright on it, and then we would have owned it, but we didn't do that. And so I wanted to make it available to you guys. But when we took it offline, I don't know if we completely deleted it or just unpublished it. So we're trying to find it now. So, you know, by next week, I should know if we have it or not. But anyway, you'll find longer versions of Atisha's story in Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And have you guys seen this? It's just published. The middle length lamrim. Wisdom have just published it. Unbelievable. So there were 3 lamrims of Lam Tsongkhapa's. Lamrim Chenmo, you know, the big one, 3 volumes. And Liberation is a commentary on that. Pabonka Rinpoche's commentary on that. And this middle length, this is one of the texts that we're supposed to study in the basic program. So have we done this to Kurukulla at all, Deborah? Did we do middle length?
I believe we have, yes.
Geshe Tolga.
With Geshe Tolga, yeah. But I'll have to go back and look. Obviously, it didn't make a lot of impact on me.
Huh?
Well, if I can't remember, that's not saying a lot about my memory.
Yeah, I can't remember either, sorry. But anyway, there's fairly brief greatness of the author, just a few pages. So, so this middle length, so there are 3 lamrims. This is the middle one, the lamrim Chenmo is the long one. And then the lines of experience that His Holiness comments on in this book, together with Atisha's Lamp for the Path. So this is the short one. And then there's all these different prayers like Foundation of All Good Qualities and 3 principal aspects of the path and these short glance lamrims that Lama Tsongkhapa wrote. So like that. So not only is there this, but there's Pabonka Rinpoche's commentary on the middle length lamrim, the essence of the vast and profound. So an oral discourse on the middle length lamrim of Tsongkhapa. So this is the little brother of Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. And these books were published by Dechen Ling Press in Seattle by David Gonzalez. He translated some amazing books, like his commentary, this commentary on the Guru Puja, Lama Chopa, and you know, Yamantaka texts and Haruka Body Mandala, all kinds of, mostly tantric stuff. And he really put out a lot of books. Qu'est-ce que c'est? William, what's that? Bill? Yeah, that's the one. That's the one from Thailand. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that's the Tibetan Library published that, I think. Yeah, I think that's maybe a different one. So David Gonzalez, over a few years, he churned out all these amazing books, and then he died of cancer quite quickly. So which is, and he was young, you know, so it was, you know, I guess his work here was done, I don't know, but it was kind of bodhisattvic activity. So anyway, Wisdom have got the rights to Dechen Ling Press's books, so these are available through Wisdom now. I mean, you just can't, it's, you know, 50 years ago, there was like nothing. Well, almost nothing. There was, the only lamrim text in English that I could find in the early 70s was Herbert Gunter's translation of the Gampopa's Jewel Ornament of Liberation. And I don't know if you ever read anything by Herbert Gunter, But, you know, the first book after my Copan course, when I was trying to find something, was The Dual Ornament of Liberation. And then the second book was a dictionary, because he uses all these highfalutin words, like highfalutin. And it was kind of, I think he was a philosophy professor or something, so maybe he had a certain standard of incomprehensibility that he had to maintain. But that was the only lamrim book in English that you could find. Now, fortunately, I guess you could say, you just can't keep up with it. It's unbelievable. Okay. So a traditional biography describes the spiritual path to inner freedom. So the footnote here says a traditional biography is known as a story of thorough liberation, namta. So, so the traditional biography describes spiritual path to inner freedom, followed by the person whose life story is told. Less emphasis is placed on historicity than on the inspirational value of events, since it's intended to give us the impetus to practice. Atisha means outstanding or eminent. A lot of footnotes here. Atisha is thought to be a word from an Indian language and is translated into Tibetan as Pultu Jungwa. It is equivalent to Joje. Joje meaning Lord, the respectful title given to Atisha in Tibet and still used today to refer to him. So Joje Atisha. And, you know, Lama Sonam has this Buddha statue called the Jowo, right, in his center. So the main statue in the central cathedral in Lhasa is called the Jowo. So that's the most important. The main Buddha statue in Tibet is the one in the central cathedral. And it's called the Jowo, the Lord Buddha. So Joje Atisha, we usually just call him Atisha. So Atisha was named by, he became renowned in Tibet. In India, he was mainly known by his ordination name, Dipamkara Shrijnana. So that's translated into Tibetan as Pel Mame Zeyeshi. Pel Mame Zeyeshi, meaning glorious, illuminating, exalted wisdom. I think Mame is also the word for butter lamp. And it's said that Atisha's main disciple, Dom Tomba, every day of his life after he met Atisha, would every night would offer a butter lamp to him. His father was king of Sahor, thought to be a part of what is now Bengal. Traditionally, it's told that his family enjoyed fabulous wealth, but even as a child, the trappings and splendor of royal life held no interest for Atisha, who from an early age wanted to live as a monk. So a little bit different from the Buddha himself. You know, Buddha was also born into a royal family, but he kind of went through the motions until his mid to late 20s when he took off. So Atisha was wanted to live as a monk from a young boy. He had a loving and compassionate nature and a stable and disciplined temperament, and quickly showed an unusual command of skillful means. He studied and became well-versed in the 5 branches of learning: medicine, crafts, composition, logic, and Buddhist philosophy, and gained extensive knowledge of the 3 categories of teaching, as well as all important aspects of Sutra and Tantra. So these 3 aspects of 3 categories of teaching, we know them as the Tripitaka or Denosum. There was teachings on discipline, mainly set forth in the training of ethical discipline, or conduct. Those on knowledge primarily explain the training in wisdom or the view, the right view of emptiness, while those on sutra principally explain the training in meditative stabilization or meditation. So the 3 baskets of teachings, Tripitaka, the Vinaya, the Sutra, and the Abhidhamma. Along with this vast scriptural knowledge, he acquired experiential insights through his practice of ethical discipline, concentration, and wisdom. So these are, the 3 higher trainings that we talk about: higher conduct, higher meditation, and higher wisdom. His ethical conduct was exemplary, and when he eventually took ordination as a monk at the age of 29, he observed the code of discipline immaculately, informing himself from the relevant texts as to how this should be done. So it says that Atisha was ordained in the Mahasangika tradition by the elder Srila Rakshita at Bodh Gaya. That's Bodh Gaya, that's where a bunch of us were ordained also in 74. The Mahasangika had 6 branches, all belonging to the Vaibhashika school of philosophical tenets. So that's a Hinayana school, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. Srila Rakshita is said to have attained the patience stage of the path of preparation, at which point total confidence that one will never take a bad rebirth again is gained. So he was Atisha's preceptor. During his journey to Tibet, he stopped the whole caravan each time he felt he'd created any infraction of his vows, and purified it before a small stupa with which he traveled. So if you have the little Vajrasattva purification booklet that you're supposed to carry in your pocket, this story of Atisha and his stopping every time he thought he'd broken a vow to purify it immediately is told. And so is this. He cherished his vows and said that as far as he knew, he'd never transgressed his individual liberation vow. That's his monk's vows, pratimoksha vows. He'd only occasionally transgressed the bodhisattva vow, but he frequently transgressed his tantric vows. So here, the individual liberation vow is so called because observing it enables the individual to attain liberation. It focuses mainly on the maintenance of pure physical and verbal conduct. Different forms are taken by lay and ordained people. His Holiness talks a little more detail about it here. The Bodhisattva vow entails refraining from 18 major and 46 minor transgression. Ideally, it is taken when one wishes and feels ready to engage in the deeds of a bodhisattva. So when you're ready to move from aspirational bodhicitta to entering bodhicitta, then we take the bodhisattva vow. Emphasis is placed not only on physical and verbal conduct, but on constantly maintaining an altruistic state of mind towards all living beings. The tantric vow consists of restraint from 14 general transgressions, and there are also 8 branches. There are also numerous pledges and commitments which must be kept. One is required to observe the tantric vow after receiving yoga tantra and highest yoga tantra empowerments. So we don't, I don't remember any Lama giving yoga tantric initiation. I don't know what that would look like, but mostly they either give Kriya Tantra. There are 4 classes of Tantra: Kriya, Charya, Yoga, and highest Yoga. So usually they give Kriya, lower Tantra, like simple, Medicine Buddha or Manjushri or Tara, like often Geshe Tsulga gave them at the center. I guess Geshe Tinley is given Tara and Medicine Buddha, or I don't know. But mostly we get highest Yoga Tantra initiations. So that's when you take the tantric vows. So the spirit of the pratimoksha vows is not to create negative karma, and certainly avoid rebirth in the lower realms, but ideally to attain liberation. They're called pratimoksha, the vows of individual liberation. And the spirit of the bodhisattva vows is the avoidance of self-cherishing. And the spirit of the tantric vows is to avoid dualistic view, seeing things as existing from their own side. So that's extremely difficult to maintain. And that's why Atisha probably said he would break his tantric vows like rain falling. And so whenever he noticed that it happened, he would stop the caravan and jump off his horse and put his stupa on a high place, on a rock or something, and then do 3 prostrations and immediately purify the broken vow. So that's why he carried a stupa with him all the time, so that he could do that. So it was his custom never to leave any transgression unpurified overnight. So that's why Rinpoche wanted us to have this little Vajrasattva booklet, which contains the Vajrasattva purification with the 4 opponent powers. And, the last thing at night before going to sleep, we should do the Vajrasattva practice so that while we're asleep and, our mind is no longer distracted by external sense objects, it's there's kind of less going on in our mind. So negative karma that hasn't been purified can fester more easily while we're asleep. So, but if we do the purification before we go to sleep, then that purifies negative karma created, at least in that day. And the second rule about karma, that karma is expandable, so that, it sort of increases double, such that they say that if, the karma of killing an insect left unpurified after 14 days has multiplied so that it's as strong as if you'd killed a human being, which is quite serious. The Bodhisattva vow is frequently given as part of the initiations we receive, and we take it quite casually. Yet we hesitate to take any of the individual liberation vows when, in fact, these are easier to keep than the former, than the Bodhisattva vows. Lama Tsongkhapa remarked that a life story like Atisha's delights the intelligent because it inspires them to practice, while only fools are enthralled by common tales of wonders and marvels. So here Geshe-la explains, Lama Tsongkhapa was born in Amdo, that's in northeastern Tibet, was a great reformer, a dedicated practitioner and prolific writer. He founded Ganden Monastery in 1409, the first of the monastic universities of the new Kadampa or Gelugpa tradition. His great exposition of the stages of the path, Lamrim Chenmo, and his other works on the stages of the path are directly inspired by Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So, you know, the Lamrim Chenmo and the middle length Lamrim and, you know, the lines of experience, they're all come from Lama Tsongkhapa's understanding and practice of Atisha's lamp. Contemplating Atisha's life story, we discover the purity of his inner and outer conduct, achieved through constant mindfulness and mental alertness. So that's what we need, you know, constant mindfulness and mental alertness. He developed a calmly abiding mind and special insight into the nature of reality, and gained stable attainments of the stages of generation and completion in the practice of Tantra, accomplishing isolation of body, speech, and mind, and the clear light. So we'll explain that a little bit more later. But in the practice of highest yoga tantra, there are two stages, as mentioned, you know, the generation stage and the completion stage. So in the generation stage, we learn to generate ourselves as a deity, and we generate the mandala, and we enter the mandala, and sort of like that. And in the completion stages, the more advanced practices like the 6 yogas of Naropa and stuff where we work with the winds and the channels. And I don't know, have we done the, I think we've done, I don't know, with some of you, we've done the inner heat meditation. I've definitely done it here.
Maybe through a visiting teacher. I don't think that Geshe Soldo, Geshe Telny ever taught it.
I'm saying I did.
Oh, you did. I think we did, but I wasn't there.
Anyway, it's the inner heat or the seed syllable meditation, Lama Yeshe used to call it. It's in Sangye Kadro's book, How to Meditate, Kathleen McDonald's book, How to Meditate. We've definitely done it. Maybe some years ago, I can't remember. But that's a sort of what can I say? Well, anyway, you've all heard of Tumo, you know, the inner heat, where the Tibetan yogis generate heat and they sit out on the ice in the freezing winds and they dry wet blankets and stuff like that by generating inner heat. So that's what this practice comes from. It's the first of the Tumo, you know, the inner heat, the first of the 6 yogas of Naropa. Well, maybe we'll do it again one day. Some, you know, years and years ago, Lama Yeshe had me, in the late 70s, had me going to the West to give courses for people who were drug dependent. Sometimes these courses were called Kick the Habit. I did a couple in Italy. One was called Drop the Monkey. And Molla la Scimmia, and any Italians here? And I did that 1 year, and the next year they called it Flee the Cage. So it was a bird cage with the gate open. And the idea was, and the main practice that Lama Yeshe had me teaching was this inner heat meditation. And that was to try to demonstrate in a 10-day course that people could generate bliss from within their own mind, from within their own body, and a much better and more satisfying experience than that of a more lasting experience than that of taking drugs. So your mind is more clear, it's more alert, and so to prove that you could find satisfaction within yourself without depending on external substances. That was the theory. I did a number of these courses in Australia and Italy, Spain. I think I did one, England, one or two. I don't think I cured anybody, but and I didn't really think I would. I mean, you can't. People have been using something for years, and then you come in for 10 days, and then you go away again, and there was no follow-up. The centres weren't, in the end especially, they weren't really, there was no one there, and they weren't really equipped to follow up the centres that organised these courses. And really and it was basically lamrim, I mean, I didn't know what to talk about. So, at that point I'd done about 8 or 10 lamrim courses with Lama Zopa Rinpoche in Nepal and traveling and stuff. So that's kind of all I knew. And then so that's my real intention was to get people interested enough in the lamrim so that they'd go to Nepal and meet Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa Rinpoche and then take teachings from them and maybe get into it that way. But the thing is that in those early Kopan courses in the 70s, most of the people who attended were already in the East. They didn't have a reputation in the West. We didn't have centres where people would be encouraged to go to Kopan and do the course. Mostly people were in the East already, in India and Nepal. And certainly word spread throughout, the drug-crazed hippies about this course. And so the drug-crazed hippies would show up. And it was a 1-month course. It was fairly strict, so people weren't allowed to even smoke tobacco, let alone, smoke dope or, drop acid or whatever they did. So, so people kind of tended to dry out anyway. But through getting into meditation, people understood that there were a lot of benefits from meditation, and that using drugs, even tobacco and alcohol, sort of detracted from the development of their meditation practice and prevented them from getting sort of any deeper experience, really. So, this is better than that, so you stop doing that because you want to concentrate on this. So it was kind of a natural sort of evolution for people who wanted to practice meditation, that they just stopped using whatever they were using. So that was kind of the experience. So I don't think I was able to really convey that, but a lot of people did go to Kopan, and quite a few of them became, and still are, sort of useful FPMT students. So maybe there's a little benefit that way. anyway, so, there's in highest yoga tantra, there's generation stage and the completion stage. And the completion stage is working with the chakras, trying to open chakras and working with the winds and the channels and the drops and all that stuff. So isolation of body, speech, and mind and the clear light. So we'll do that later. Compassion, love, and the altruistic intention were his foremost practices, Atisha's foremost practices. Compassion, love, and bodhicitta. So, if that's good enough for Atisha, should be good enough for us. He received both general education and specifically Buddhist education in Sutra and Tantra from 157 teachers, all of whom he revered. A number of great masters, including Kusali the Younger, Dharma Rakshita, and Dharma Kirti of Suvarnadvipa, gave him instructions on how to generate bodhicitta. So Dharma Rakshita, he's the author of that Wheel of Sharp Weapons. You all studied that. So it says about Kusali the Younger, the spiritual teacher referred to as Jampe Naljor, I guess that's him, in Tibetan sources, meaning practitioner of love, is thought to be Kusali the Younger. So he's in the lineage. If you look in the back of Liberation in the palm of your hand, there's Kusali the Younger and Kusali the Elder, I guess. It's said that he could actually take on the suffering of others. Once, while teaching in the open air, he saw a man viciously strike a dog with a stick. At the moment of impact, Jampe Naljor fell from his seat and the marks of the blow were discovered on his body, and the dog was unhurt. This teacher passed on to Atisha the lineage of extensive deeds, the method lineage, the explanation of the hidden meaning or the extensive aspect of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. So, see if I get this right. There's two kinds of teachings that the Buddha gave. There's explicit and implicit. So the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, explicitly they're teaching on emptiness, but implicitly they're teaching bodhicitta. And texts like the Abhisamayalankara, we studied the 4th chapter. We did that 2 or 3 times with Geshe Tsulga. I don't know if Geshe Tenley's done it. The 70 topics and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's, so the explicit teaching there is Abhisamaya. It's one of the 5 texts of Maitreya. Ornament of clear realization. The explicit teaching there is bodhicitta, and the implicit teaching is emptiness.
Isn't the reverse?
So sometimes, what?
I thought it was the reverse, that the explicit to the Abhisamayalankara was emptiness, but the implicit, the hidden meaning was method. No?
Yeah, maybe you're right. Sorry if I got it wrong. Anyway, there are these 2 kinds of teaching, sometimes called definitive and interpretive. So Kusali wandered from place to place, ecstatically singing the words of the mind training practice he was doing. He sang of taking on the suffering and disturbing emotions of others and giving away his body, possessions, positive energy, his merit, and happiness. So, Tonglen. Once, while he was doing this by the Ganges, Maitreya appeared to him in the guise of a celestial king and with great delight joined him in song. Kusali was overjoyed, and any remaining doubts he had were dispelled. So maybe if you go down to the Charles and sing ecstatic songs of Tonglen practice, Maitreya will appear to you. So Dharma Rakshita, what does he say about him? Dharma Rakshita was a bodhisattva who initially held Vaibhashika philosophical tenets, Hinayana school, but later adopted the Madhyamaka view. Atisha studied with him at the monastic university of Odantapuri. So that's the third one. Dharma Rakshita is now best known for his work, The Wheel of Sharp Weapons, a text in the mind training tradition which explains how the many difficulties and troubles we experience are the results of our own past negative actions. His verses evoke particular situations and the specific actions responsible for producing them, demonstrating how the wheel of sharp weapons returns full circle upon us for the wrongs we have done. So then Dharmakirti of Suvarnadvipa was a member of the royal family during the Shailendra Empire. He is known as the Master of the Golden Isles. This term was used to refer to Sumatra, Java, and the islands of the Eastern Archipelago. The empire also included a large part of the Malay Archipelago and the Malay Peninsula. In the Tengyur, there are 6 works attributed to him, of which one states it was written in Vijayanagara of Suvarnadvipa. This was the old port and capital of Sumatra. Of these 6 works, 5 were translated into Tibetan with Atisha's participation. One of them is an extremely long commentary on the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which indicates the master's command of Mahayana philosophy. He enjoyed considerable stature as a teacher and exponent of Buddhism and had other Indian students besides Atisha. He certainly visited India and may have spent some time studying at Vikramashila. So how Atisha's story will explain how he met this teacher in Sumatra, Serlingpa. Dharmakirti of Suvarnadvipa. It is said that he held the Chittamatran view, so it's the lower Mahayana view, and that Atisha tried repeatedly to persuade him of the Madhyamaka view. He passed on to Atisha the hidden meaning of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, which came down through Maitreya and Asanga, as well as the lineage which came through Manjushri and Shantideva. So, method and wisdom, concerning the practice of equalizing, exchanging self and others. It's thought that through exchange of self with others, that Atisha developed bodhicitta. Of the 2 aspects of the altruistic intention, bodhicitta, relative and ultimate bodhicitta, conduct and view, Dharmakirti of Suvarnadvipa's special expertise lay in the conduct of bodhisattvas. He held several great lineages of instruction, and through his knowledge and example inspired Atisha to develop bodhicitta himself. Geshe Rinchen is calling it altruistic intention here. I don't think altruistic intention is strong enough to translate bodhicitta, really. For this reason, Atisha always spoke of him with deep feeling and the utmost reverence. So, as I said, Atisha had 157 gurus and recognized them all as Buddhas. And when Lama Zopa Rinpoche says that when he referred to any of them, he would always fold his hands like this in reverence. But whenever he mentioned Serlingpa, the teacher from Sumatra, he would not prostrate here, but he would prostrate the crown of his head with his hands like this. And, tears would come to his eyes and his hair would stand on end, just when he remembered the kindness of this incredible teacher who helped him develop bodhicitta. So he was, I guess he considered him his root guru, the one who had the most positive influence on his mind like that. How did he meet this great teacher? Although Atisha had gained profound understanding of Sutra Tantra and of the great Buddhist commentaries, he continued to wonder what was the essential path to enlightenment. One of his early teachers, Rahula Gupta, who lived far away, knew of this through clairvoyant powers and miraculously appeared to Atisha. So it says here in the back, Atisha was sent to Rahula Gupta, who lived at a place known as the Black Mountain near Rajgir. So Rajgir, Vulture's Peak, perfecting to wisdom, second turning of the wheel. So next week we have the first turning of the wheel, don't we? Is it Choko Duchen?
Yeah.
On the 14th. So that was the first turning. Buddha taught in Saranath the Four Noble Truths. So the second turning of the wheel was at Vulture's Peak, Rajgir, near Nalanda. And we taught the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras, like the Heart Sutra that we just did. So Atisha was sent to Rahula Gupta by another of his spiritual teachers, Avadutipa, with whom he studied extensively and who is identified in some texts as Vidyakokila the Younger. Rahula Gupta was instrumental in helping Atisha free himself of his father's expectations to take over the kingdom. Having conferred on him the empowerment Hevajra, he sent Atisha back to his father's palace with 4 male and 4 female accomplished practitioners. So, yogis and yoginis. With the intention of securing Atisha's freedom, they stayed in the vicinity of the palace for some months, wearing little besides bone ornaments of tantric adepts. Their strange and unconventional behavior succeeded in convincing Kalyanashri that his son had gone mad and was unfit to rule. So, it's like I don't know, it's like, if Prince Harry had become a tantric adept, no, not Harry, say Prince William had become a tantric adept and, showed up at Buckingham Palace, sort of naked, wearing bone ornaments and smeared with ash, with his hair tied on top of his head, all dreadlocks and everything, and playing little damaru drums and dancing around and singing weird tantric songs. I think, well, I don't know who they'd give the throne to. They couldn't give it to Harry either. So probably, who's the next in line? Prince George, is that his name? Anyway, so, maybe if he became a punk rocker and came there with, safety pins through his cheek and wearing, anyway. So they basically freaked out Atisha's father, the king, such that he stopped insisting that Atisha give up his religious practice and take over the kingdom. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche enjoyed telling that story. And, we enjoyed hearing it. I mean, you've got to stick it to the man, Okay, where am I? Rahula Gupta. Okay, so he sent Atisha and the yogis and yoginis back to freak out the father. So he knew that Atisha was wondering, what's the essence of the path to enlightenment? So he realized, he knew of this through his clairvoyant powers and miraculously appeared to Atisha. He told Atisha that visions of deities and of mandalas, miraculous powers and heightened concentration would not lead him to enlightenment. The altruistic intention, bodhicitta, was essential, and to develop it, he should take as his meditational deity Avalokiteshvara, the embodiment of compassion. So I think we know about Avalokiteshvara without the footnote. Actually, they're not footnotes, they're endnotes. I prefer footnotes because you can just, they're at the foot of the page. You don't have to turn to the back. You have these little markers there, He should also wholeheartedly assume responsibility for freeing all living beings from cyclic existence. So many subsequent extraordinary events corroborated this advice. In Bodh Gaya, we know about Bodh Gaya, statues spoke to him and he overheard manifestations of Tara. We know about Tara. Conversing about the importance of bodhicitta. So he had this vision, different aspects of Tara, maybe the 21 Taras, they're all talking to each other about how important bodhicitta is. Conversing about the importance of the altruistic intention. To this day, people make offerings to several statues of Tara in Bodh Gaya, claiming that one of them is the Tara who advised Atisha to cultivate the altruistic intention, while another encouraged him to go to Tibet. So when at Bodh Gaya, at the Mahabodhi Stupa, the big stupa where Buddha reached enlightenment, there are different deities carved and different things all carved around, but there's one, I think it's to the upper right of the entrance to the temple where the famous Buddha statue is. And it's covered in Kata's offering and it's been gold painted. They say that's the one that spoke to Atisha. Since it was reputed that Dharmakirti of Suvarnadvipa, usually call him Serlingpa, Tibetans call him Serlingpa, held the most complete instructions on how to develop the altruistic intention, Atisha resolved to visit this great master. So I think Lama Zopa Rinpoche said, or I saw somewhere else, that actually it wasn't just reputation that led him to want to study with Serlingpa, but when he heard the Taras talking about the importance of bodhicitta, he asked them, what's the best way to develop bodhicitta? And one of them said to him, you have to go and study with this teacher, Serlingpa, in Suvarnadvipa, Sumatra. Buddhism must have been huge back in what we call Indonesia, and certain part of Malaysia back then, because, this huge stupa of Borobudur is in the middle of Java, near Yogyakarta on the west coast. Anyone been to Borobudur? Amazing place. I went there in 72 when I was just traveling around before I got involved in Buddhism. Some fortunate reason led me there. And but it had been quite badly damaged by, I don't know when exactly, by Muslim practitioners, I guess. And there are all these Buddhist statues in these little sort of lattice, open sort of stupas. They're like lattice work, so you can see into it and you can see the Buddha. And all the Buddhas had their heads cut off when I was there. But then shortly after that, the UNESCO took on the project of restoring it. And I know the Australian government gave quite a bit of money. Whitlam's government back in the mid-70s gave quite a bit of money to restore. So it's been, it's quite well restored now, but it's really amazing. And all carved around all the sides are the Jataka tales, like 550 something previous life stories of the Buddha, the Jataka tales. All these carvings all around there. So, you know, I didn't know what it was. I just climbed up the top and smoked a joint. But yeah, I don't know if I've worked that one off or not yet. So anyway, one way or another, either Tara told him or he just figured it out for himself that he had to go to study with Serlingpa. With 125 students, he set out for Indonesia on board a merchant ship. So they're going from, I guess, West Bengal across the, the Bay of Bengal? No, is it? Across to, is it the Bay of Bengal? Is it the Indian Ocean? What is it up there? Anyway, 13 months. So it must have been a pretty slow ship. During the 13-month journey, they faced many extraordinary dangers. At one point, a leviathan rose up in front of the ship and blocked its passage. Maybe it was a whale. Then thunderbolts rained down on it, and great storms threw the vessel off course. After 3 weeks of such calamities, Atisha's companions on board begged him to put a stop to these terrifying events. Finally, through the force of his love and compassion, he succeeded in pacifying the demonic forces which were hostile to his enterprise of seeking instruction on the altruistic attention, bodhicitta, and to his wish that the Buddha's teachings should spread more widely. So he pacified them through positive thinking. In Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, Pabonka Rinpoche so it just talks about the teaching of liberation and Pabonka Rinpoche. In Liberation, Pabonka Rinpoche comments on various episodes in Atisha's life, pointing out what we can learn from them. Although Atisha was naturally endowed with unusual compassion and love from early childhood and gained extensive knowledge and insights, he was still prepared to make this dangerous journey for the sake of developing bodhicitta. This shows us the crucial importance of bodhicitta as the very heart of Mahayana practice. The critical importance of bodhicitta as the very heart of Mahayana practice. So this is going a little slowly. I hope you don't mind. I think Atisha's life is very, his life is a teaching itself, like all the lives of these great masters are. So, and if we understand who Atisha was and what his life was like and how he practiced, we can have a deep appreciation of what he taught and really see it as, perfect personal instruction for ourselves, even though it was taught such a long time ago. So I'm going to wind up. Anybody have anything? Someone? Jen?
Yeah, I have a quick question about the lineages, but first I want to apologize. I misunderstood what you were saying. Of course, the ornament of clear realization talks about the implicit meaning of the perfections, but it's explicitly about method. So I apologize. Of course, you're correct. The lineage, you say, so the vast and profound lineages meet with Atisha. What does that mean? Does that mean that he taught, then he was the first to teach on both method and wisdom?
No, I'm sure they all taught on method and wisdom, but there were these two distinct lineages. It wasn't sort of all or nothing. It couldn't be all or nothing, as these were kind of enlightened masters, and you don't get enlightened without bodhicitta. So even I think even Nagarjuna knew something about bodhicitta, but just if you look at the way the lineages are, anyone got liberation? I don't have it at hand here, but so have a look at the lineage there. I forget how it goes, but you got it there, someone?
I do, yeah.
So do they? Yeah. So do they come together at Atisha? Is that how? Is it shown like that?
Yeah. So the extensive deeds ends with Suvarna Vipa, and then profound views ends with the younger Vidyakokila.
Kurukulla, yeah.
Yeah, and then it goes to Atisha, and then
So then he had those two masters as two of his teachers, and so through them, like that, he received both lineages.
Oh, I see.
But of course, the teachers in the wisdom lineage had bodhicitta, and the teachers on the method lineage understood emptiness. So but anyway, it's just illustrated like that he received both lineages. Like, Shantideva he's in the wisdom lineage, isn't he?
Well, they don't list him.
Shantideva's not mentioned?
No. It just goes Manjushri, Nagarjuna, Chandrakirti, and then the two Vidyakokila.
Okay, well,
I mean, maybe.
Okay, well, everyone do your own research there and see what you think. But Atisha had as direct gurus two of the teachers of those lineages, and so he brought both lineages to Tibet. So that's how the wisdom lineage and the method lineage were both brought to Tibet in the one teacher of Atisha. Okay, so Deborah?
Just one thing I wanted to point out, there is a biography of Lama Atisha. Shambhala Press has published it. I have not read it yet, but I think Jennifer has. It's in the Lives of the Masters publication series.
Oh, okay. I haven't seen that. Is that who's the author?
James Apple, who I do not know of, but he's qualified.
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll check that out. So we started by generating bodhicitta, and we have been, discussing the life of Atisha from authentic sources. So, there's no doubt that we've generated quite a bit of merit. So before we destroy it through anger or wrong views or anything, we should dedicate it. So, we'll just do the essence. We won't do the prayers now, but think, because of this merit we've generated by motivating with bodhicitta and by doing the pure action of studying the life of Atisha, through this merit, may our teachers live long and healthy lives until samsara ends. May the pure Dharma spread infinitely throughout all directions. May all sentient beings reach enlightenment as quickly as possible. So, try to really feel that in your heart. And try to feel personally responsible for seeing that all sentient beings reach enlightenment without even a second's delay. I must achieve enlightenment for the sole purpose of enlightening all sentient beings. Try to feel that. Okay, guys, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, very
Sure,
much.
hope to see you next week.